All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Titans and honestly, mainly their number one draft pick in tonight's video because I just saw, according to DraftKings, and I know take it with a grain of salt, that Cam Ward is the betting favorite by far to be the number one draft pick selected by your Tennessee Titans. And so Tennessee's coming off a 3-14 record, and they had just a brutal negative 149 point differential. And you're seeing a lot of stuff of, one rumor will say this: oh, neither quarterback's going to be selected in the first two picks of this year's draft. And then you'll see another one saying Cam Ward will probably go number one to Tennessee. Now, despite your opinion on Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or even Abdul Carter, et cetera, Travis Hunter going pick number one, I want to give you a little bit of a story on why, or just an example of why I think the Titans should select a quarterback, even if it's not the best guy in the entire NFL draft. Because first off, I think Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward will both be above average quarterbacks in the National Football League. But I made a Titans video a couple of nights ago, and I was talking about the number one pick, and I was saying I'd go for Shedeur Sanders. But most Titans fans wanted a trade back to acquire a haul very similar to the Chicago Bears. That is, or 2 years ago, Chicago, right? And then they conveniently got once again the number one draft pick and were able to select Caleb Williams. But my point is that doesn't really happen that much. And like that you have the number one pick in back-to-back years, folks, that almost never happens, especially through a trade, but neither here nor there. I've covered the Las Vegas Raiders for like 3 seasons now, heading into year 4. And the Raiders are similar in the sense of Tennessee, where I make videos on this team in the offseason, and on paper, it's actually not that bad of a roster. And I know it sounds crazy, the 3-14 record. I will talk about the roster a little bit later on. Like, for example, I think the Titans' defensive line, I think it's actually loaded with studs. Like Arden Key, Simmons, obviously, Sweat now. I think it's littered with studs. You don't want to be the Raiders, where you have actually a decent roster, and despite whoever your coordinators are, despite who your coach is, because of the subpar quarterback play, they've not been a good team at all. The Raiders have not been a good team for since Derek Carr left, or they traded Derek Carr, released him, whatever. My point just is, you don't get the number one draft pick that often, and if there's a sliver in the Titans' brain trust's brain that one of these two quarterbacks could be their franchise guy, you take him. You take him. And your GM said a couple of weeks ago that they're not going to pass on generational talent, and a lot of people viewed that as Travis Hunter. Now, I'm not a Titans fan, I'm a Packers fan. So if they draft Travis Hunter, that's very cool. Take the Bears route. All right, try and get a QB next year. Trade back to pick number 4, pick number 3, whatever, and get a guy like Travis Hunter, get a guy like Abdul Carter. But I don't love it. I think they need a quarterback. We'll talk about that in just 1 second, but just going back to the overall philosophy or just the state of the Titans right now. They finished this past season with PFF's 28th ranked offensive line, not a single starter graded above 61.8 for the season. Obviously, the quarterback play was and is the number one glaring hole. Will Levis, very bad season. Mason Rudolph, statistically, PFF-wise, eye test-wise, whatever you want to say, a little bit better than Will Levis, but neither of these quarterbacks on Tennessee's roster are franchise material. That's just bottom line. And so the Titans currently have the 11th most cap space in the league at about $44 million in projected cap space. And they also, most importantly, have the number one pick. And so I saw an article, I think this was on The Athletic, that NFL executives are split on what the Titans will do with the first pick in the draft. You can take Cam Ward, you can take Shedeur Sanders, like we mentioned early on. You can trade back, try and get a haul for next season. But basically, ESPN polled different executives around the league about what they think they will do. The results were mixed, but a little bit in favor. 5 think they will trade out of the number one pick, and then 3 think they will keep it. So just if you're wondering, one NFL scout, so it's an NFL scout, take it with a grain of salt, it's February 18th, like there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of headlines we're reading about the draft and free agency right now. But here's what he said: I'd say it would take a pick swap no later than number 7 overall this year and a second rounder, and a first rounder next year and at least a third round pick as well for next season. So it's not the worst package. But once again, I go back to like what the Raiders are trying to do in the last couple of years, where it's just went from Jimmy G to Gardner Minshew, these quote unquote journeyman guys, and it just doesn't work out. But we could use examples of the Chicago Bears. You could even use an example, not necessarily draft trade wise, but Sam Darnold, journeyman, going to Minnesota. They just won 14 football games and they were one and done. But my point is, I'd go out there and get my franchise guy. All right. The good news is they have a decent amount of pieces. Like Calvin Ridley has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. There's not too much consistency outside of him. I'd love for them to retain Westbrook-Ikine, but kind of seems like they're going to be moving on from there. Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, I think, are two really good running backs to have as a duo. Like, I think people were underwhelmed by Tony Pollard's year. 260 carries for 1,079 yards, averaging about 4.15 yards per carry, which is, it's okay. Keep in mind, once again, fourth worst offensive line in the NFL. J.C. Latham looked really good. Skoronski, Northwestern legend, looked very good as well. So there's a lot of hype, or I should say potential, on the offensive line. And honestly, the defensive line as well. Arden Key just had a phenomenal season. Devondre Sweat, your second-round pick last year, just had a really good season against the run. He ranked 8th at his position per PFF in run defensive grade at 75. Jeffrey Simmons, superstar stud. He's only 27 years old. He's still in the prime of his NFL athletic, just professional athlete career. So when I read like Abdul Carter being number 1 overall, I just don't really love it. Travis Hunter, you're seeing a lot of people out there right now being a little bit, I don't even know what the word would be, a little bit cautious about Travis Hunter's wide receiver techniques. I'm not an NFL scout. I'm not an NFL player, so I'm not the right guy to ask. But my point still stands. Whether it's Abdul, Travis Hunter, McMillan out of Arizona, Mason Graham, Will Campbell, the number 1 pick, if Tennessee chooses to keep it, should be either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. And personally, for me, I like Shedeur a little bit more because I think he's just got that it factor. But then at the same time, when you watch Cam Ward at Miami, he also has the it factor. And so I urge you to go back there. If you're a Titans fan especially, I go back and I urge you to watch a couple of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward games. Even if you have in the past, just go get refreshed on it, because that could be your starting quarterback for hopefully the next 10 years. And I don't know. I don't think they desperately need Abdul. I don't think they desperately need Travis Hunter. I'm going with Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. And that's just my opinion. But I wanted to make this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. We're posting a ton of Titans videos this entire offseason as well. But guys, let me know if you're the Titans, especially if you're a Titans fan. What are you doing with the number 1 overall draft pick? Thank you for watching. Peace.